Hello, my previous video was about Ukrainian propaganda, which often seems too hysterical and even hilarious, but it still works much better than Russian state propaganda. And today I will tell you why I am considering Russian propaganda very weak. I want to remind you that you are my only sponsors, no monetization from YouTube, no ads, so if you want to support me, link is in the description. To show you how weak Russian propaganda is, I'll start from 2022, when Russia had completely lost information war from the very beginning. In the first hours of conflict, Ukraine started an intensive brainwashing of population to make people fight Russia. Neutral or pro-Russian people were killed or silenced, only one opinion is left. In the same time, Russia had nothing to counter this. Seems like Russian government thought that everything will be like in Crimea in 2014, where everyone just supported Russia without propaganda. But situation had changed since 2014. Ukraine, with the help of West, made massive propaganda campaigns, and Russia didn't work with Ukrainian people at all. No soft power or influence like the US and Europe had. Russian social media were blocked in Ukraine since 2017, so Ukrainians had no source of alternative information at all. The only narrative in the first days of war was about the evil orcs from the border who came to kill Ukrainians, and no second opinion. That's why so many neutral people became Ukrainian nationalists. YouTube main page consisted of Ukrainian propaganda videos that Russia had already lost, and situation with the West was the same. Russia had some channels like RT, but they were immediately blocked in all social media. And among both Russian and Ukrainian young people, especially among Zoomers, it was a trend to be against Putin. In Mariupol or in Donetsk it's hard to support Ukraine, because here you can see the real face of it. But people who lived further started to support Ukraine just to be against Putin, especially bloggers and other public persons like artists. They made posts in support of Ukraine, etc. It's a little hard to explain, but back then there was almost no public support of Russia in the internet. I really respected neutral people, because at least they don't support the enemy. 3 years later, situation is different. Now most of Russians see what Ukraine really is. In 2022 it was painful for me to see that despite Russia is right, its propaganda is so weak that no one knows about Russian point of view. Most people saw the situation like peaceful country was attacked by an evil dictator. And it's very easy to believe in it, because you don't need to do research. In Western and Ukrainian reality, nothing happened in 2014. There are no Nazis in Ukraine, and no pro-Russian people in Ukraine. Everything is simple. Now let's talk about reasons why Russian propaganda is so weak. In Ukraine, propaganda is total and made for everyone, for young and for old, for smart and for not so smart. And what does Russian propaganda consist of? There is TV that only old people are watching, people under 50 don't watch TV, and Russian TV is awful. There are talking heads like Solovyov, who in 2013 said that Russia don't need Crimea, or Simon Yan, who said that there is nothing bad if Siberia will be nuked. It's hard for me to believe that someone can take this serious. And I'll say this again, it's made for old people only. For my generation, even phrase watching Solovyov live sounds like a funny joke. There are also news on TV and no one cares about them. Like, this is Konashenkov. In the first years of this conflict he made a daily summary about the front line. I can't say what was wrong with their summaries, but no one liked them. Maybe it's just looking too official and too boring, like the Soviet propaganda which said that capitalism will die tomorrow. And the worst thing about Russian TV propaganda is that even when it is completely truthful, somehow it's shown in such a way that you don't want to watch it, and don't want to believe it. The most famous example is the Nazis in Ukraine. Like, there are a lot of Nazis in the Ukrainian government and army. There are tons of confirmation, and if you research this topic, it's just getting obvious. Thousands of people with Nazi symbols, and a society which views its neighbors as subhumans. And Russian TV propaganda usually just repeating word Nazis millions of times, without showing the confirmation, despite there are thousands of confirmations to show. So, Nazis in Ukraine became a meme. And there are very few Russian documentaries on this topic, mostly made before 2022. Of course, most of Russians still know that there are Nazis in Ukraine, but not from TV. Russian TV just looks like a straight propaganda which you don't want to believe. Maybe it's because people who are responsible for it are too old and don't know anything about the internet or about modern society. I won't be surprised if they started to work in 1980s when TV and newspapers were the only propaganda source. There are also newspapers, I don't even want to talk about them. It's also for very old people and it's even worse than TV. Back in 2022 in March, Russia gave such newspapers in Mariupol. There was no electricity, no internet. And I remember how we looked on this propaganda because it's just a propaganda. Newspaper said that Azov soldiers used Mariupol citizens as a human shield. Like we didn't notice. And that Azov soldiers are kicking people out of their homes. Like this is true, but the style of the articles was so official. And the most funny words for us were, after 8 years of darkness, the dawn broke over Mariupol. Such article makes sense now, when Mariupol was revived. But back then we had no electricity, very few food, and we had a chance to die every day. The city was destroyed. It would be better to say something specific about a humanitarian aid or about the front line, because that was the only source of information from the outer world. Also, a big problem of Russian propaganda in the first 2 years was that it never said anything specific. Words denazification and demilitarization became a meme. All officials said that all goals of the special military operation will be achieved. And the goals are denazification and demilitarization. You can understand it however you want to. These words can mean anything. And also Putin often gave speeches where he said interesting things about multipolar world and the West, and nothing specific. He always said the same things, and there were many cases when everyone expected his speech, and it was just the same as previous ones. Let's compare this with Ukraine. Ukrainian officials always promised something to population. To return Mariupol before 2024 summer, to return Crimea before 2024 autumn, etc. And despite now it's very funny, back then it was good for morale of Ukrainians. And Zelensky uploaded speeches every day where he said about the things that happened that day. Ukraine was really good at information warfare, and Russia really good at real warfare. To understand how poor Russian propaganda is, look at Mariupol, which I'm showing for 2 years. It's all been renovated, not only in center, not only in few places, but everywhere. And Russian state propaganda usually showed only one place, the Nevsky district. Very few times Russian TV showed other new quarters, and never showed old Soviet buildings which are being renovated, or new parks. There are hundreds of places to show, and there is no information about them in the internet. Sometimes local channels reported about them, but usually the only way to see them is to go there. There is no website, no map, no database about the rebuilding of Mariupol. Same with other cities, like Avdiivka or Severodonetsk. I found some videos on YouTube and in Telegram, and that's all. To learn about the general condition of the city, I will go there myself. The only good example of Russian propaganda is videos from Russian Ministry of Defense. Unfortunately, most of them are available only in Telegram channels, so they are not popular. Here you can see my favorite one about the conscription in Ukraine.
Нічого, тату. Не плач. Тримайся. Все буде добре. Трунко! Завантажуй цих!
Батько наш Бандера, Україна мати, ми за Україну будем воювати. Батько наш Бандера, Україна мати, ми за Україну будем воювати.
Давай наступних!
That's all with the state propaganda. Fortunately, there are enough people who are trying to promote the truth. The most important source of information about this conflict is Telegram. There are thousands of military channels from both sides, and this is maybe the main resource for the propaganda and information warfare. Telegram administration is more or less neutral, so there are a lot of channels from both Russia and Ukraine, but it can be considered as state propaganda. Let's talk about the other part of informational warfare, about memes. Russian side has plenty of memes, and the most popular ones are from Ukrainian propaganda. Like Ukrainians are calling Russians orcs, so there are a lot of patriotic memes about this. Or there were news about Russians stealing toilets, washing machines, and even asphalt. And this topic is still popular even 3 years later. And my favorite one is that Russians have missiles only for 2 or 3 massive strikes, which was said 2.5 years ago. In the beginning of the war there were many memes like phrase «Слышу зов ебать Азов», which is still popular. And there were also some popular songs like «Лето и арбалеты» by Akim Apachev, a native of Mariupol by the way, about Wagner group. By the way, Wagner was really popular, and maybe is still popular, despite it exists no more. There are also many post-ironic memes like Goida, which can't really be explained here. All of these memes are popular among all Russians, including those who don't really care about this war. Of course, there are much more memes in the Telegram channels related to the SMO. Now I'll say a few words about public opinion in Russia. In general, everyone are obviously supporting Russia and want victory, but unlike Ukrainians, Russian people support this passively. Some people are really interested in this topic, many are helping the front line, but many don't know where Bakhmut is located and who controls Kharkov now. Especially my generation, most of young people are living like there is no war at all. At the same time, many people have relatives or friends on the front line, so I can't say that people ignore this war completely. Most people here want Ukraine to be defeated because they can see the real face of Ukraine. Ukrainians hate all Russians, including Russian opposition. They are wishing death to all Russians. They want all Russian cities to burn. Ukrainian propaganda and Ukrainian drone strikes help Russians to understand who the real enemy is. And Ukrainians are doing better job than Russian television. And it seems like the reality is forming the public opinion. On the one side there is Putin, who is saying that Russia will live better. On the other side there are some Russian guys who escaped to Europe and want Russia to return Crimea and pay millions as reparations. And the Ukrainians who are saying that all Russians are slaves and it's necessary to kill them all. Who do you think people are supporting? It was a very complicated topic, but I hope this video was interesting. You can support me on Boosty if you want to. Thanks for watching.